Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, attendees and participants, and welcome to the October 11th, 2022 meeting of the City of Tampa Variance Review Board. From my left, the members of the board are
Una Johnson,
Cher Powers,
Sam Decker,
Brett Feldman,
Anna Walrack,
Aaron Murphy.
Also in attendance from legal, we have Susan Johnson-Velez. From Development Coordination, we have Jane Madu and Ms. Tavares. Mary Tavares. All right. From Natural Resources, we have Stephen Eister. There he is, hiding in the back. From Transportation, we have no transportation tonight. Jonathan Scott, is he here tonight? No? Okay. Well, sometimes he's here. There are some procedural rules that you will need to follow. When your case number and petitioner's name is called, please approach the podium. When you approach the podium, please state your name, address, and if you have been sworn. I'll say that again because everybody gets it wrong. So when you approach the podium, please state your name, your address, and confirm for us that you have been sworn. Thank you. And if you don't, I'm going to ask you, so just a reminder. The petitioner and or their agent will have 10 minutes to make presentations. All other persons or participants wishing to speak will have 3 minutes, and the petitioner will have an additional 5 minutes for rebuttal if needed. The time periods as stated will be kept by the board. Any information such as pictures or plans that have not been previously submitted as part of your petition and you intend to present at this hearing for consideration in support of your petition must be individually presented and accepted by the board. After acceptance by the board, you must submit the item to staff for it to be entered and made part of the permanent record. The board bases its decision on competent and substantial evidence which is presented and which meets the criteria for the city's code of ordinances. Please be sure to clearly state your hardship criteria during your presentation. A majority of the board is needed to approve your variance. The variance granted by the board will be only for what is shown on the site plan and will be in compliance with any terms and conditions stated in the approval by the board. All other city codes will need to be met. If the case is approved, your variance will expire 2 years from the date of the decision. If the case is continued, it will be continued to either next month's VRB board agenda or the next available position on an upcoming VRB board agenda. If the case is denied, you may wish to have the Variance Review Board's decision appealed by the City Council. To do so, you must file a petition for review of the board's decision within 14 days of the written decision. You will not be able to pull any permits until after the 14-day review period has passed. Your cooperation in ensuring that this meeting runs smoothly is greatly appreciated. Do I have a motion from the board for approval of the meeting minutes from the September VRB hearing?
I move to accept the meeting minutes from last month.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approval of the meeting minutes from September, say aye. Any opposed? All right. Meeting minutes are approved. At this time, I'll ask legal staff to confirm whether any ex parte communications or conflicts exist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Susan Johnson-Velez, Legal Department. At this time, I would ask the board if they have had any ex parte communications with anyone with respect to any item on the agenda this evening. Hearing none, I would then ask the board if they have any conflicts of interest that they are aware of with respect to any item on the agenda this evening. I see none, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Are there any changes in the agenda that staff wishes to address?
Good evening, Jane Amadu, Development Coordination. VRB 2292 has requested to continue to December 13th VRB hearing.
Okay, they're not on our agenda. Do we need
They
a motion
are-
for that?
They are on the agenda. They are,
Oh, there.
yes,
Okay.
addressed at 526 Luzon Avenue.
Okay, so does anyone want to make a motion to continue VRB 2292?
I'll make a motion to continue VRB 2292 to the December VRB meeting date.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about the movement of VRB 22-92 to the continuance on that.
I just want to, flag for council that I work with the agent for VRB 2292, so I will fill out a form, but I won't vote on the continuance.
Okay. Seeing that no one in the audience wishes to speak on this, let's go ahead and. Okay. So in the motion, it would be the November.
December 13th at 5:30.
At 5:30 PM.
December 13th. There's no November meeting?
Well,
We're full on November.
they can't notice in time for November.
Got to do it in December. So December 13th, 2022 at 5:30 PM.
Correct.
All right, I'll move to move the VRB meeting 22-92 to the December VRB meeting on December 13th at 5:30 PM.
All right.
And I'll second.
Terrific. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? One abstain. Great, that one is continued. Anything else?
VRB 2215 requests to be continued to the November 8th VRB.
I'm sorry, say that, say the number again, please.
VRB 2215, addressed at 611 North Bradford Avenue.
Gotcha. And they would like to move to December as
No,
well?
November 8th.
November 8th. Okay. November 8th, 5:30. All right. Do we have a motion to continue VRB 2215 to November 8th at 5:30 PM?
Sure, I will make a motion to move VRB 22-15 to the November 8th VRB meeting at 5:30 PM.
Okay, and is
And
there
I will second.
terrific. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about the continuance of 2215, VRB 2215 to November 8th? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, VRB 2215 is continued as well.
All right, and the board has unfinished business regarding VRB 22-68, addressed at 427 Erie Avenue. The applicant has provided 2 additional letters of support.
Okay. Now, we are not rehearing the case, we are only hearing new evidence, is that correct, Ms. Johnson-Velez?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And revoting.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay, so is the applicant here? All right, come on up. If you would, please state your name, your address, confirm that you have been sworn. You know what? We need to do the swearing in. I got so excited by all the changes in the agenda, we skipped swearing in. All right, let's go ahead. Everybody, if you would, please rise. If there is a chance that you will speak this evening, if there is the smallest possibility that you may get up and have to provide some testimony, please stand up and be sworn. Otherwise, when that time comes and you decide, oh, I have to speak, you're going to need to be sworn in separately. So let's go ahead and, if there's a chance, come on, go for it.
Do you swear that you would tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Terrific. All right, thank you so much. All right, come on up. Did we get everything that we needed to do? We did the swearing in, did the changes. All right, if you would, go ahead and give us a quick recap of what you're asking for, and then if you want to present any new evidence, any new information for us, that would be very helpful.
Sure. My name's Eric Hughes. My address is 814 South Davis Boulevard, and I have been sworn in. So the recap from the last hearing was the request is to remove a grand tree in the rear of the yard for a new swimming pool. Really the situation is, and the hardship here is, this is zoned RS60. The lot was originally only 55 feet wide. So it's a very narrow lot, narrower than it's normally supposed to be for that zoning. The saving grace for a lot like that would be depth. which it has some, but the placement of the grand tree in the rear yard being so far in prevents you from using that depth essentially. So it's smaller than the surrounding lots. At the last hearing, and as a result of the noticing process, there was one letter of opposition it wasn't presented until the actual hearing, and I had not been contacted by that individual who was the neighbor to the left. After the last hearing, we met with that neighbor on site. She did provide one of those two letters. She rescinded her opposition and went on to describe why she's actually supporting the petition now. The second letter that you have is also from the neighbor on the other side, who is, I would say even more affected by the tree for his own reasons, because the tree is overhanging his roof, his pool structure. So his reasons in his letter are he is a little worried for himself, and especially probably with the recent hurricane scare that we had. And in his letter, which you have a copy of, he did provide some photos of his own of the tree in question overhanging his property. So that's the quick synopsis. So as to my knowledge, there's been no, so the one letter of opposition has been rescinded and it's now support, and there have been no other letters of opposition, nor has anyone in the whole process contacted me, the applicant, about the petition.
Okay, thank you so much. Does that complete your presentation this evening?
Yes.
All right. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition this evening? All right. Come on up, please. One at a time. State your name, your address, confirm that you have been sworn.
My name is Bob Whitmore. I am the Executive Director of City Tree. I have been sworn in. My address is 3111 Hawthorne Road. We opposed this last time, and we are here to oppose it again. I speak for all the tree advocates that are in Tampa. The reasons for taking down this tree are pretty ridiculous. As we pointed out last time, this house went up and they didn't have a pool, and it wasn't able to have a pool because of the tree being there. Then after the house does go up, then the people who moved in, suddenly they wanted a pool. Now the reason that they give is that everybody else has a pool. This is a healthy tree. I think that the city will back me up on that if we have to have them come up again to speak about this. I just want to do a quick overview on trees during a storm, just for everybody. I'm sure you probably know this, but I just will point it out. The trees probably protected us more than anybody would know. When a storm does move in as much as 100 feet up, trees will actually cut down the wind speed considerably of any kind of wind that comes in. A good healthy tree will break wind and keep the wind from actually touching a structure. So a lot of our thanks can go to the trees that are actually in Tampa Bay for keeping a lot of the damage down on a lot of the structures in this city. This tree, it generates enough oxygen for 4 people in a year. It absolutely helps with taking away a lot of the water. We've got a lot of problem with runoff, especially in these areas where a lot of the trees are going down. You have a lot of reasons that you have to look at. And I think the most obscure one is the reasonable use. And you have to wonder, is putting a pool in a reasonable reason to take down a healthy tree that is in this neighborhood? And as we are watching a lot of trees, we just got a notice about a tree taken down illegally just today. So the tree community, for which I speak, FAN and City Tree and Sierra Club, we do stand against this tree coming down for the reason of putting in a pool. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Allison Date, 2403 West Chicago, and I was sworn in. Remembered all the things. I am here also, again, to speak for the trees, because in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, I think we realized that that could have been us that was affected by that storm. And I think every bit of every grand tree and every permeable surface needs to be protected in this town because we're sort of at sea level. So we need to be saving all of Tampa's healthy grand oaks, and this is one of them. And so I think, they could put in a smaller pool, but otherwise, I don't think a pool is advisable. And on that note, there's a wonderful description now in the city website about trees as being a very important resource. And I think everybody who is going to get a permit or have a variance should read that, because it states why it's so important that we save these trees, as Bob alluded to some of them. And anyone purchasing a house with a grand tree needs to be aware of the special protections that are given to these trees. And the reason for that is because people had the foresight to realize how important they are. So please, I hope that you're sort of the last line of defense to preserve our city's canopy and permeable surface. And so every time you make a decision, I hope you'll remember that, because I think it's for the best of everybody in this city. Thank you very much.
All right, is there anyone else who wishes to speak about this petition?
Yes, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, John Grandoff. My address is 5300 Bayshore Boulevard, Unit B5, Tampa. And this is a very simple case because the reasonable use test in the tree ordinance answers the question. If you purchase a piece of property with a grand tree on the property, you're on notice as to the reasonable use test in the zoning code. The fact that the request is to build a pool also answers the question. Reasonable use of property does not require a pool. In summary, a swimming pool is a luxury, and these folks are not deprived reasonable use under their property under any stretch of the imagination, under any principles of law, or under any taken analysis. So I ask that you deny the application based upon failure to meet the reasonable use test. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition? Seeing none, is there anyone on the board who has questions for the applicant, for anyone who spoke, for city staff, or other resources? Please.
Can we be reminded what the tree was rated at? Do we have that information, Stephen?
Hello, Stephen Eister, Natural Resources. I have been sworn in. The tree, I believe, was rated a C8, which is right on the edge of needing a variance and not needing a variance. So it's kind of that borderline call, but it's still preservation quality. It's not saying that. It's just, it's good quality. It's just because of the new targets and everything like that, the rating has been increased.
And it's a live oak?
Correct.
One more for you, Stephen. And for this type of tree, and they take it down, isn't there a mitigation of some sort? They have to replace certain number of inches of trees?
Yes, there will be mitigation per the tree table. Grand trees have a different category, so they won't get, they have like a 24-inch tree on site. That won't count towards their mitigation. Grand tree mitigation is separate.
Okay. So what's the point or the count that would be applied for removal of this tree?
Yeah, I don't have my memo directly in front of me. I want to believe when I did it, it's like 9 or 10 2.5-inch trees that would have to go back.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for applicant, staff, or any of the speakers?
I do have a question for you, Stephen. Is there even space on that lot? I do not remember there being a whole lot of green space left on that lot as it was. Would there be enough space to put 9 or 10 units to replace this one?
To replace the trees, they would have to utilize what space they have first, and then anything beyond that, they would have to contribute to the tree restoration fund that the Parks Department then used to plant trees in parks, right-of-ways, and different things like that. So it'd probably end up being a combination of the two.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? No? All right, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, board members. To add on to your question there, you know, and to Stephen's point, it probably would be a combination, to be honest with you. We do have the whole front yard is open right now, so there's more space in the front than in the rear to plant additional trees, so it certainly will be a combination. I know both of the adjacent property owners did ask. One said in his letter, but the other one did not, said in person. They do want to see trees planted back, which I'd agreed to with them privately, verbally. A couple things that were mentioned just now that I wanted to clarify. Kind of recapping last time as well, there was a comment made a few minutes ago that suddenly now we want a pool. To recap from last time, this is a home for sale. The buyers came along and they wanted the tree. What's on the proposed site plan is what they want. It wasn't a sudden thing. There's nothing nefarious going on. That was just the timeline of events, and that's when it became a real, that's when it became, you know, when the pool arose. The other comment about the hurricane discussion, you know, I mean, the gentleman may be correct and trees may provide some protection from hurricanes. However, in this specific case, and of course we weren't even a direct hit, I'm also a Davis Island resident. I live a few blocks away, and I know many people who got, you know, power was knocked out to them. My understanding were there were 2 trees that fell over on the west side of Davis Island, and a half or something close to half the island was out of power for a day or two. So, you know, trees may provide some protection, but they can also cause a lot of destruction. That is what the one neighbor's concern is, to the right of the home where the tree is overhanging his property. But that, I'll turn it back over to you. That concludes my rebuttal.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion from the board, or if needed, discussion. Anyone like to make a motion one way or the other?
I'll do a motion.
Okay.
I move that the variance request for case VRB 22-68 for property located at 427 Erie Avenue for removal of a grand tree to be denied during to the failure of the petitioner to meet the burden of proof with regard to the 6 factors for determining reasonable use set forth in section 27-284.2.5 F4 of the City Code for granting tree removal, specifically that this is new construction and it clearly looks like the house has maximized the lot area and also took care to protect the grand tree in its new construction. Therefore, adding a pool after the fact just kind of, we are then setting a precedent that removing a grand tree for a pool is okay, and I don't think that is right. Having a pool is not a right at this point. So I believe this is a self-created hardship.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Does anyone want to, is there a need for discussion on this? I'll throw it, discussion. I continue to be, I continue to be on the fence about this. It is a C8 tree. It is a live oak, but at the same time, it's not in great shape. I agree with the position that a pool can be a luxury, yet I also understand that we are treating the reasonable use factors as if it were any structure. As we were told to discuss it last time. So with that in mind, I think this is a tremendous challenge of an inquiry. And I'm curious to see if anyone has anything to sway me as to how I should approach this. I mean, we know that they can because we've seen alternative designs.
I'd rather have that than.
I guess, the point you raised up about the tree rating, then that becomes another issue, right? So what's the point of the tree rating if we're now going to not respect that? And then we're also kind of having a fine line of tree rating. So I'm just,
That's an excellent point.
it's a little, like, how far do you want to take it? I see where you're going with it, but I don't want to be the one to start that either.
Yeah, here's the issue that I see with that. We can sometimes preserve a borderline level tree, or in the alternative, we can plant, 10 new trees that in 10 to 20 years will be healthy, thriving trees.
Right, but, a grand tree is special, which is why it's under this special protection. And maybe if it's cared for a little bit better, because it was probably, in a smaller house or uncared for lot for a while, it could be viable, which is probably why it's not a dangerous tree marked as that. So I have to believe that if it's protected for a reason.
I kind of go back and forth on this one with Brett also. With the neighbors, the additional support, the photos of the limbs over someone's pool cage. I mean, there's another 24-inch tree that's also a C8 that's, the limbs are almost entangled with one another.
You can
Would the
trim and
would the
prune
would the
and
24-inch
shape.
thrive and become better without the other one there? I'm not an arborist, but, with the neighbors' concerns and the people that are now in support that are the direct neighbors, again, I'm still on the fence, and they're both C8s. Are they gonna eventually just snuff each other out?
No, I think it can go the other way too.
I think that's why they're C8s, because they're sitting so close to each other.
That's not true, though.
All right, any other points of discussion before we go ahead and take a vote?
The only thing I want to mention is that, there's been a lot of discussion about the rating of the tree, but, I don't necessarily see, that we have to put a whole lot of weight on the rating based on the factors that we're, supposed to, determine either approval or denial based on. So just kind of throwing that out there for, consideration by the board.
All good points. Okay, we have a motion for denial and a second. All those in favor of denial say aye. All those opposed say nay. All right, we have another tie and another continuance.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. There's nothing in the rules that, the only thing that happens with a tie vote is that it rolls over to the next agenda.
Okay. Either we'll see you next month, or maybe you can work something out.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. I think that moves us to VRB 2290. Is that right?
Correct.
Which just so happens to be. Yeah, she gets to go first, sorry.
All right, the next case before the board is VRB 2290. This is addressed at 5611 South Russell Street. It's zoned RS50, and the request is to remove a 37-inch ground live oak to construct a pool. Code section in reference is section 27-284.2.5 that has the criteria for the removal of a grand tree. This is an interior lot in the South Tampa Planning District. This shows the site plan of the subject property. This is the first alternative site plan that the applicant provided showing what they could potentially put in if they stayed outside of the radius of that tree. This is a second alternative site plan showing an encroachment into that radius by 5 feet, so they're 15 feet setback from the tree. And this is the third proposal, which is what the applicant is looking to put in for the pool. This was reviewed by right-of-way and found consistent with no comments. This was reviewed by Natural Resources and found inconsistent with technical standards and code. And they attached a memo that was included in the staff report that was sent out. Transportation review was not required. We received 1 letter of support and 1 letter of objection. In the determination of the variance request before you, the board shall consider section 27-284.2.5 that has the criteria for the denial or the approval of the request to remove a grand tree. If you have any questions, Stephen Eister will be available and I will be available.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Madhu. Come on up, state your name, your address, confirm that you've been sworn, and then you will have 10 minutes to make your presentation.
Yes, I am Brian Schatz of 14608 Lake Magdalene Circle, and I've been sworn in. I'm also a certified arborist, FL 6123A, and I'm a landscape designer, nice combo, and I design hardscapes. So as you can see, I posited 3 different scenarios. The first one, with such a skinny pool, I doubt the client who's here, Cliff Hale, would want a pool that's only 6 feet wide and a dog leg. The second one was one that we tried to work with the city of Tampa, and it sort of got nowhere. We just heard nothing back. And then, of course, the ultimate would be to remove the tree so they could have the pool of their dreams, which would fill the whole backyard. So the petition on the second version being a 15 feet setback, evidently the home itself had some sort of variance going on because it itself is in the 15-foot range, and it has a wooden deck in the back that respects that, because, you know, 2 things roots need: air and water, and root systems go 2 to 3 times further than their own branch spread, and it's a collective area where there's lots of trees. The neighbor just to the left of them put in a pool, and a screen enclosure is probably just going to be CO'd soon. There are a few branches over, but I am not the kind that is worried about branches being over a pool, as long as there's an arborist there every 2 years to take the risk out of it by pruning the best way that they can. So if the variance review board would not want to remove the tree, the version number 2, we would air spade the system so we see the roots, and I would oversee where the piers would go for that wood deck, which would allow the 2 things, air and water. And we'd want the wood deck to be 24 inches above grade to really help the root system. Then the pool itself, according to your new rules, you can't be any higher than 12 inches above grade. It sure would be nice to have it be 24 inches and not have to step down into the pool where all the leaves are gonna fall. That version is acceptable to my client, but of course they would rather have, you know, the tree gone and have a wonderful backyard that's a pool. I'm pretty sure the first version would never get built, but I had to show you that that's legal, but it's kind of a ridiculous scenario. So if you see all three of them, the second version is a possibility. And then they'd have to have some sort of a cover that goes over the pool to keep all the twigs, debris, and acorns and all that comes, and keep it away, because you're not going to be able to put a screen enclosure underneath a canopy like that. So they have young kids, and one is coming along the way, and they want to have a pool. I remember as a child, I swam a lot, and I know what it's like. I don't swim anymore, but you know, it's what they would like to do. Am I being clear about the desire here, or do you have any questions?
We'll have an opportunity to ask questions after
Okay.
everyone else has had an opportunity to speak. So I guess I'll ask, does that complete your presentation this evening?
Let me talk about it almost does.
Yeah, you've got time. I mean, you've got
There
6
are-
minutes left, so.
There's a big laurel oak about 23 feet away in the other yard, and it is massive, and it actually cuts into the canopy. And I had a canopy, you know, noontime, late submission somewhere like about a week ago that came in, and it shows where the canopy is. But they all collectively act as one for wind abatement and all that. So even if that tree were removed, there's plenty of other trees around there that are a collective source. So one tree removed is not as bad as, oh, you leave only one tree up and you decimate the whole thing. That's not a risk-free proposition for trees. So in my assessment, that would not cause trouble in a wind load. So that's what I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition this evening? Come on up, state your name, your address, confirm that you've been sworn, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah, my name is Tom Barrett, 2706 West Thornton Avenue, and I have been sworn.
Okay.
I live right next to the property. I've lived there for 40 years. I want to take direct, I want to tell you right now that what the gentleman just said is not true. There's not plenty of trees left there, because I own the property right next to it. There's 3 houses on it now, and they clear cut the place when I sold it. They cut down every grand oak on that property except for one. So that's baloney. But here's what I'm trying to do tonight, and I want to help them get their pool, actually. And I think there's a possible way to do it. Can I give you these?
Sure.
For you to look at? It'll explain what I'm trying to say. 6?
There's 6. And then
I think there's 6.
Sir, would you like to use the projector as well?
Wait a minute.
Right, no, would you like to use the projector
Oh,
for the
okay.
overhead?
You're gonna have to show me how to do that.
you're dealing with pros, they'll help you.
Down or up? Oh, there we go, okay. Let me explain what this is. We live next to the hills to the north, where it says Lot 10 there in that little square building. That's our house, our deck, and our yard. The property with the big X in it is the property that we sold in 2019. We owned all the property to the west of us for 175 feet. It's now 3 lots, houses were built on it. In the process of selling that property, we kept 10 feet for ourselves as kind of a insulation between the new construction and our house. Part of that 10 feet is what you see in yellow there, directly behind the Hale property. Now, I don't know if this would positively affect the way the pool could go in, or if it makes no difference. But I just wanted to present it for the record to show you that this property exists. We've actually talked to the Hales about buying this property previously, and we didn't come to any agreement on it. I would, gladly sell it to them again. And we'd have to talk about price, of course, but I would give it to them at a bargain price if it would save the tree.
Okay. Are you, your time is up, but if
Yep.
you need another 20 seconds or something to complete it.
No, I mean, that's basically what I'm here for. I just wanted to present for the record that this is available. I mean, I don't want them to cut the tree down, because I don't think it's a proper reason to cut the tree down. A swimming pool is, again, I agree with the people who said this before, no one has a right to do that just because they own their property. I mean, they bought this house, the tree was there, they knew what size the property was, nothing has changed since they've been there. I just don't see any reason to sacrifice the tree.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak about this petition this evening? Come on up, one at a time. Ma'am?
Good evening. I've been sworn in. My name's Allison Date, 2403 West Chicago. Well, I was looking through the reasonable consideration, configuration considerations, and I felt that looking at the two alternatives, one or two, the ideas that could be used, I thought that if that was what was needed to do to have a pool, then that would be, perhaps okay. And that would meet the impact of the proposed pool. But I don't think that getting rid of the tree to put in a large pool is acceptable. And the idea that, having the tree because there's other people who have pools, or having the pool because other people have pools is really, I don't understand that, anyway. So, because I feel that, again, this is a very, very vital resource for our city, and each tree should be considered as an important treasure, really. And the other thing I wanted to comment on, so you already know that because I just said that before, is at the bottom of this, one of the papers that was there, the client said that they did not know that about grand trees when they purchased the place. And so I was really concerned about that. And I feel that the city's not doing a good job of educating the public about grand trees. And that needs to change. We've tried to propose an idea for talking about the new law, tree law, and there's no money. TTAG, the Tampa Tree Advocacy Group. And then the fact that don't the realtors and the developers need to tell people who are buying the lot that there's a grand tree on it and it's going to require special considerations. That needs to happen. The realtors and the developers and the city need to let people know about this because it would save you a lot of work. It would save the trees, and I just think that is what needs to happen. We need these trees, so thank you.
Bob Whitmore, 3111 Hawthorne Road. I have been sworn in. It's hard not to get emotional. I know you're not going to make decisions on emotion. Mr. Feldman's made that very clear a lot of times, all right? But it's hard to not get emotional when there are tree codes in place, and people like me and her and him have got to take our night and come down here and fight for the tree codes one tree at a time because people want a pool. There are cities all across the nation right now looking at trees as vital infrastructure. You don't have to, you have to be living in a cave not to understand what we're up against and what we're staring down the barrel of a gun at. Luckily, Tampa has had the foresight, because of a 1973 tree code addition, to keep trees, which has cooled our city, which has helped drain away rainwater, which has made it a livable city and will make it a livable city in the future. Now, the fellow here said that we're going to we're just going to take down one tree. Well, that's how it happens. One tree at a time. And suddenly the canopy's gone. You know, I've been coming here for 10 years now, and we've watched this canopy just disintegrate by illegal cutters, by people who just want to put in a pool, by somebody who just wanted to put in a garage and then decided that, well, now we got the garage, we're going to go ahead and put in another house. It's very hard not to get emotional. But I know you've got to make this decision on a rational basis, based on 27-284-.2.5, et cetera, et cetera. And I will say D. Let's go with D. Whether alternative construction methods can be utilized to preserve the grand tree requested for removal up to a critical root zone. Above ground pool. They don't need to dig a giant hole in the ground and ruin the root system for a grand oak that we all own. It's our tree. It just happens to be on somebody else's property. And when they bought that property, they knew that that grand tree was there, and nobody can tell me that they didn't know that that grand tree was there and that was going to keep them from having to do anything else in the back of that lot. That's just a lie. That's a bald-faced lie. So yeah, we'll keep coming back and we'll keep fighting tree by tree by tree by tree to preserve the canopy. And with that, I want to thank you for coming back every first Tuesday of the month, for listening to guys like me fight for trees. Second Tuesday. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak about this?
Mr. Chairman and members of the Variance Review Board, my name is John Grandoff. My address is Suite 37, it's my business address. My address is 5300 Bayshore Boulevard, literally a stone's throw from this property. Let's talk about reasonable use. And in my law practice, I used to have two discussions with clients that wanted to remove trees. And I'd say, where's the tree? It's in the middle of the property. That's denying you the reasonable use because you're entitled to housing, to shelter. If that tree's in the middle of the property, it should be able to be removed. If it's not, the tree is staying. And I used to have frequent discussions with clients like that, and I've been both sides of the issue. Removal of trees, preservation of trees. When these folks buy property in Hillsborough County, in the city of Tampa, they're charged with notice of the tree ordinance. They know about it, whether they read about it or not, or what the realtor did or didn't say. So that goes nowhere, that they didn't know about it. This gentleman says a couple things that are very telling. They want the pool of their dreams. The neighbor put in a pool. My revisions are acceptable to the client. Acorns and leaves, that's going to be a problem. Got to get those out. The screen enclosure. These are problems. These aren't your problems. You're here to debate whether there's reasonable use being denied. Remember the tree in the middle of the lot example I told you. They're not being denied reasonable use of the property. It's literally an afterthought. I've seen numerous cases of these afterthoughts. Oh, we want the pool now. And now we got to get a variance, so here we come. And I've battled many of them before. It's a simple desire, which is a nice desire, but you can build something. I handled a variance for a gentleman on Willow and Bayshore. He wanted a variance. I says, what can you fit there without a variance? He says, I can get a 6-foot lap pool. I said, well, that's what you're getting. That's what fits. They get what fits. They don't come here to ask you to get them out of their mistaken real estate purchase because the tree's there. The laurel oak canopy has nothing to do with this case. The fact that there are other trees has nothing to do with the reasonable use standard. That's the standard you have to apply in a judicial mentality and an additional test of evidence. He put no evidence on that they're being denied reasonable use of their property. In fact, they have their kids there and expecting another. Sounds like they're having reasonable use of the property. He says one tree is removed is not that bad. That's not the test. It's not a that bad test. I will conclude my remarks and tell you that this application seriously fails the test. It does violence and disservice to the spirit of the law and those that follow the ordinance and do not take trees because they should be preserved. Uphold the ordinance, deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak about this petition this evening?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Stephen Regan, 5613 South Russell Street, and I have been sworn in. I probably could have made this easy on myself and submitted my approval for this request from the owner, Mr. Hale, and his wife, but I'm here in person to give that approval. I don't think they're just doing it for themselves, but also for their family, their growing family, and I hope that they have the opportunity to make memories with their children as they grow up, because I'm assuming that is why they are going through this investment and luxury of being able to build it for them. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else who wishes to speak about this petition this evening? Name, address, sworn.
Hi, Cliff Hale, 5611 South Russell Street. And just wanted to provide a response to some comments that were made.
You've been sworn, sorry.
Yes, I apologize. Yes,
That's
I've been
okay.
sworn
Thank
in. First, and as my neighbor has just testified towards, the desire for this variance and tree removal is really for quality of life for my family. It's not a matter of he has a pool and I want one now. It's a more quality of life desire. And to some earlier comments made by my other neighbor, the property when we purchased it actually has undergone some changes in terms of the zoning, or the property, I should say, boundaries. In fact, the neighbor who had spoke initially had filed legal course of action against us due to a zoning or a deed mishap. I'm not too sure how it happened, but essentially the builder of our house had built about 100 square feet on the land that he had highlighted in his exhibit. And so the builder at that time was in a position where they could make good in that they would give them the 100 square feet back, which they did, which also, as a result, reduced the size of our backyard, to which you saw the plans for the current pool. That 100 square feet was added adjacent to our house. So there was, in fact, some change to our home after purchasing it, albeit this change may not have been, it was 100 square feet, however, felt it was worth noting. Also worth noting, the additional land in the back, there was an offer made for that land at the price of $10K. So with regard to, if a fair price or a bargain price, me being the only offer and buyer, that is the price that was given, and that was refused, as I understand it, because $15K was invested into the legal representation to, for lack of a better term, take back that 100 square feet that the builder had built over their land. And then lastly, I feel it's important to note, with the second design, we really have attempted to make this work with the tree. It was not our initial desire to tear this tree down in an attempt to get a 15-foot or a 5-foot approval, or to dig within 15 feet, I should say, could not be attained. And so, that prompted this variance and discussion today. So appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right.
Can I respond to that for just a moment?
No, I'm sorry. Everybody gets 3 minutes to speak. Apologies. But the applicant has rebuttal time of 5 minutes. If you want to come back up, if there's anything else you want to add, you have rebuttal time now.
Yes, one comment was that you could do an above-ground pool, and what I had mentioned before is tree roots need air and water, and above-ground pools are usually a rectangle or a circle, and it would still encroach, and that footprint wouldn't allow air and water underneath the above-ground pool, so it'd be just like you dug a hole. So roots are important. If the pool is a teeny little kiddie pool, like 8 feet, the roots will survive. But if it's a big enough pool, like 25, 30 feet, no, those roots are gonna die. Hopefully you can consider design number 2 because it's one that I tried my hardest so that it's actually aesthetic, it would look good, and it'd be useful to them. Since there was already a 5-foot pushback from the actual builder, that should be a consideration.
Yeah, and I apologize. I should have opened up for questions before we did your rebuttal. So let's do this. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Anyone? You'll get rebuttal time after that.
Yeah, so I have a question for the applicant. To be clear, option number 2 involves saving the tree, is that
Yes.
correct?
Saving the tree.
Okay. Okay. And yeah, so no variance would be needed
Well,
to.
actually, that was gonna be a question I had
Okay.
for either legal or for Ms. Madhu. Is a variance necessary for design number 2, or is design number 2 possible without the variance? And actually,
the variance has the trees not being removed.
okay, Mr. Eister, did you have something to contribute on that?
Yeah. So Stephen Eister, Natural Resources, I've been sworn in. The 20-foot protective radius around trees is technically a tech standard. It can be reduced down with arborist supervision. And then because they are going to end up preserving the tree, they actually get the benefits of the setback reductions as well. So they could utilize those. So they could increase the pool a little bit if they needed to kind of fit the space.
But Stephen, would a variance be required?
No, it would not
to do
be.
number 2?
Any further questions? Okay. All right, now you get 5 minutes for rebuttal. Sorry.
So, to a fellow arborist, I have a question. Would that also include elevating the actual pool deck height to match the wooden deck that we would do and have that 24 inches versus at grade it can only be 12 inches?
I think these are things that you could probably work with the city on after this discussion, depending on how the night goes.
It would make it a lot easier for maintenance and all that, so.
Okay. All right, so did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, I'm hoping that version number 2 is acceptable to the board.
Okay, well then, apologies for messing up the order there. Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion from the board. Does anyone have a motion they'd like to make?
I can make a motion. All right. I move that the variance request for case VRB 22-90 for property located at 5611 South Russell Street for the removal of a grand tree be denied due to the failure of the petitioner to meet the burden of proof with regard to the 6 factors for determining reasonable use as set forth in section 27-284 1.2.5 sub F sub 4 of the city code for granting tree removal, specifically that the applicant has presented an alternative site plan proving that the proposed pool can be reasonably reconfigured to preserve the grand tree.
All right, there's a motion to deny. Is there a second?
Second.
We'll give it to Ms. Warren. Okay, is there a need for discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of denial say aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. The petition is denied. Petitioner has the opportunity to work on alternative design 2, and should you choose to appeal the decision, you always have City Council to do so. Okay, thank you very much.
The next case before the board is VRB 21-126. This is addressed at 23.
Take a pause.
Yeah. This is addressed at 2302 North Massachusetts Avenue. It is zoned RM16, and the variance request is to reduce the rear yard setback from 15 feet to 7 feet for the purpose of constructing an accessory structure. The code section in reference is section 27-290(1)B. Accessory structures with a gross floor area greater than 15% of the minimum required lot size are required to meet principal structure setbacks as referenced in section 27-156. This is a site plan showing the existing property and a picture right there showing the home. This is the existing single-family dwelling and an existing one-story garage. This is what is being proposed, the new two-story structure. And the rear yard setback here, which is the request before the board, is reducing that from 15 feet to 7 feet. This was reviewed by Natural Resources and found consistent with conditions with the following comment. Natural Resources has no objections, but the removal of the 2 trees along the property line are recommended for removal due to their condition and possible construction impacts. Trees look to be shared with the neighboring property owner. This was reviewed by Transportation and found consistent with conditions. They did provide 2 parking spots, so I believe that they have met the requirement of Transportation. This was also reviewed by a right-of-way and found consistent. We received no letters of objection. We received 9 letters of support. These are pictures that the applicant has provided showing us the existing single-family residence and the existing accessory structure. In the determination of the variance request before you, the board shall consider section 27-80 that has the criteria for the approval or denial of a variance request. If you have any questions, I'll be available.
So it's, is it the size that's exceeding accessory structure amounts triggering main
Principal structure, correct,
setbacks?
yes. So if this was under 750, then they would be required to have 3 by 3, but because it's above, they're required to meet principal structure setbacks.
Okay, thank you. For staff?
Yes. So in the information that you gave us,
Mm-hmm.
it mentions a date of 8/22, reduced rear yard setback from 15 to 7. But then there's an updated request on 10/15/21. So they actually got the variance, or?
No, what happened was that initially they were working with an agent, And then I guess they had some issues, so they had a new design, and with the new design, they were meeting the setback on the side, and the only variance that they were requesting for was for the rear. So in the previous design, they needed to put a side and a rear yard setback. In the new design, they're only requiring the rear yard setback.
Right, is the applicant here? Come on up, state your name, your address, confirm that you have been sworn, and you will have 10 minutes to make your presentation.
Yeah, so if you wanted to show anything. Okay.
Hi, I'm Callie Rabo. I'm at 2302 North Massachusetts Avenue, and I have been sworn in. I'm just gonna go through the statements of hardship. So the first part is that the alleged hardships or practical difficulties are unique and singular with respect to the property or with respect to the structure, building thereon, and are not those suffered in common with other properties, structures, or buildings similarly located. So there are two particular hardships that are unique to our property. First, we are located on a corner lot with no alley access. Nearly every other house in our neighborhood has alley access except for ours. So this limits the access and orientation of the allowed accessory structure. And second, the location of our existing 75-year-old home has limited where we can place our allowed garage apartment. The next part is the hardship or practical difficulty does not result from the actions of the applicant. A self-created hardship or practical difficulty shall not justify a variance. So this hardship does not result from our actions. We are on a corner lot with no alley access, so in a sense, we don't have a conventional rear yard, but it's as if we have two side yards. So we are asking for a variance for the rear yard, which when viewed, as you saw from those pictures of the addition, it will appear to be a side yard, essentially. The distance between the garage apartment addition and the neighbors to our rear, or the west, from which we are seeking a variance, will be similar to the other side yards on Park Avenue and our neighborhood. And last, one of our children is deaf and hard of hearing, and so we wish to preserve as much of the yard as possible for her safety. The next part, the variance, if granted, will not substantially interfere with or injure the health, safety, or welfare of others whose property would be affected by the allowance of the variance. The variance will not substantially interfere with or injure the health, safety, or welfare of others whose property would be affected by allowance of the variance. By providing a rear variance, we will actually be bringing the garage into further compliance by meeting the required side setback. And finally, the variance is in harmony with and serves the general intent and purpose of this chapter and the adopted Tampa Comprehensive Plan. So the variance is in harmony with and serves the general intent of the purpose of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan for three reasons. First, the proposed structure will not impose a change in the neighborhood, since there are similar structures. Some rear garage apartments in our Tampa Heights Southwest quadrant include 311 West Park Avenue, 205 West Francis, 410 West Francis, 317 West Francis, 211 West Francis Avenue, 209 West Francis Avenue. And second, the proposed design is in keeping with the historic character of the neighborhood. And finally, the third, the Tampa Heights Civic Association has identified density and affordable housing as one of our priorities, so there's wide neighborhood support for these structures. Allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done. The rear yard setback variance from 15 feet to 7 feet will allow us to preserve the existing 75-year-old home and keep with the historic nature of our neighborhood. This variance will allow us to preserve our yard for our deaf and hard of hearing child. And finally, we are promoting density and affordable housing, which our neighborhood supports. Thank you very much.
Okay, that completes your presentation this evening?
Yes.
Well done. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition this evening? Yes. Come on up.
Peter Schmid. I live at 2304 North Massachusetts Avenue. My property borders the north boundary of their property.
And you have
And I have been sworn in. Yes, sir. All right, I prepared a statement just for time limitation reasons, so I'm going to read to you if you don't mind. First off, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that our neighbors, Paul, Callie, Maya, and Calvin are very nice people. That's not for debate. And we also wish to live in harmony side by side with them. In the same breath, it's also our desire and expectation to maintain a minimum level of privacy and safety at the place that we call home. I'd like this approval board to also know that Paul and I have had several conversations prior to this meeting to satisfy both our wants and needs as it relates to his desire to build an accessory dwelling or structure. Those conversations were collaborative in nature, but ultimately unsuccessful at achieving a mutually agreeable outcome before today's deadline. We live in a city where living density is promoted, and inherently it means that we're on top of each other, day in and day out. We don't have issues with that. In fact, we bought our house knowing that, because the city code, regulations, and guidelines are in place to provide an element of security and privacy for each property owner. In this case, my wife and I feel strongly that approval of this variance request without conditions undermines the core purpose of those guidelines and furthermore shifts the hardship to my family and I. A blanket approval without conditions to address our concerns does interfere with our health, safety, and well-being. And here are a couple of examples. I have many, but I only have so much time. So number one, and I have photos if you guys would like to see these, our pool deck, our patio are an area that we frequent for private family time to relax. Our house is a little unique in that it's one of the only pools in the area. And that borders the full length of the proposed structure if the 15-foot setback is not withheld. So if you don't withhold the requirement of the 15 feet, it borders the full configuration. This very configuration does allow direct visibility into our pool, our patio, our living room, and kitchen at a very short distance from both the first and second floor of the new proposed structure, completely negating the privacy that we enjoy today. Paul and Callie shared that they intend to rent out this structure and use the bottom portion of their home. While we support this density and affordable housing, the added activity from both further erodes our privacy and well-being in a very significant way. Now, I know this may not sound material, but it is when you factor in what we're currently dealing with. And we support this, but their yard is used as an urban farm. They have a composting business which welcomes nuisance and insects that come with it. We knew that when we bought the property. It's common for them to have flower farming classes in the yard with groups. They have chickens, greenhouse on the property line, etc. We are not and have not complained about these things, but the added activity, use, and impact associated with this variance approval does materially impact our well-being, health, and safety. I'm going to move forward. There's some security things, but I won't talk about that. Here's what I do want to say to you. In closing, I'd like to state for the record that we do not object in principle to our neighbors having an accessory dwelling or structure if it's allowed by right of the zoning district. If the setback variance is granted by the Variance Review Board, we ask that you should attach conditions that will protect our privacy. We ask for no windows or balcony on the rear or north side of the structure and limit windows on the east side within 20 feet of the property line to privacy windows no greater than 36 inches wide, 12 inches high, the same windows that we have looking into their property. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
And I have photos if you would like to see the photos of how
photos are always helpful if you'll submit them to staff.
Great.
Also, a well-done commentary. So, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition this evening? Seeing none, I will open it up correctly this time for questions from the board, for the petitioner, for any commentator, or for city staff.
I have a couple questions for the applicants. and then probably some questions for the neighbor as well. So, Ms. Rabbo, yeah. So, my understanding is that there is currently a one-story garage on your property that is closer to your neighbor's property than your new structure will be. Is that an accurate statement?
Correct.
Okay, and how wide is your current garage? And the reason I'm asking is in comparison to the new garage, is it any wider?
I don't think it's any wider. The 2-car garage on the bottom and then 2-car garage on the bottom again.
And the reason I'm asking is, will your property, I guess, back up to your neighbor's any more, when he looks at it than it currently does? So if your neighbor is looking south onto on your accessory structure, currently it looks like it's, holds two cars looking left to right. And the new one is also, it looks roughly the same size, but my question is whether it is in fact the same size.
The width is the same? I'd have to look at the plans. Man. Okay. Yeah, it's about 22 feet. The width is the same, but if we were, okay, so currently it's 1 story. So it would be to 2-story and further away from their house. So it would actually be further away from their house. And if we don't get the variance, then we're still gonna build this, but we will actually be closer to their house.
Right, okay. Understood. And then, let me see, my only other, I think that answers all of my questions, for now, but I might have some more depending on what the other board members ask.
Okay. I did want to ask the neighbors some questions, if you wouldn't mind coming up.
Yeah.
So you are to the north, you said. So you are currently, as to the 1-car garage that exists now, you're currently looking at that 1-car garage.
Correct.
From the south end of your property, correct?
Yes,
South.
I'm looking at the north of their
Gotcha.
current structure, correct?
Okay. And it would be moving further away, and we believe not getting any wider, but certainly getting longer and certainly getting taller.
Correct.
Okay. And you've had discussions about window placement with your neighbors?
We've had discussions about window placement.
And no resolution on
No
those
resolution,
discussions?
no. In fact, before coming here, I was hoping that they would offer a plan, but we haven't seen a plan or any of that. And we were clear that we wouldn't object if we understood that there was some concern for the privacy that we talked about.
Okay. All right. That is all the questions I have for you. Does anyone else have any questions for this gentleman before he goes and sits down?
I do. So we're just talking about this corner of the property is going to be 2 stories. It's not the main residence, which could be 2 stories too, but so it's just the garage.
Correct.
It's getting moved further south. I do see the concern maybe for the north end of the top floor of the structure looking directly down. Would you be open if maybe there was no access to windows that a person could visually look down at your property, but maybe ones that provided light?
Oh, absolutely, which is what I proposed.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so, not on the back side though, the north side, because that's directly looking, like if you look at the photos, if I stand in my living room or kitchen, if I'm in my boxers or whatever, it's direct line of sight. It's not far at all.
I'm just thinking of just the north end.
Right.
Because the other end, even if that other structure was 2, so you'd have the same issue, but that one is more direct, I agree.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Okay, any other questions for this gentleman before he takes a seat?
I have a question. Are there generally parking issues in this area?
Yes. With Armature Works right there, a block away, it's it's a big problem. And there's crime issues too. Our vehicles just stolen out of the driveway because of the massive issue that we have.
Thank you.
Okay. I had a question for you, Ms. Rabo. Am I pronouncing that right? Rabo, I know you said it.
Rabo.
Rabo, okay.
Yes.
So we've heard from your neighbor about some concerns about window placement, and you're going 2 stories up. Those are reasonable concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any agreement as to how to address those things, or have you discussed those issues? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we agreed to windows on the top.
So like outside that's sort of the normal eye level, like way up top.
Yes, on the side, the north side that faces their pool.
Okay.
We did not agree to windows on our east side that looks in our side yard. That would leave, for that dwelling up there, that would leave no windows in that second half of the home. So looking down on their pool, we said we would put the tall windows, but then that room needs windows, so we did not agree to no windows on the other side. That being said, our neighbors have windows that look right down into our yard. One of them is like a stained glass one that you can't see through, but there is a window that does look down into our yard. So I do feel that that is an unreasonable request when you have a window that looks onto our yard.
Well, so question about that.
Yes.
So the windows that they have looking down on onto your yard,
Mhm.
are they within the setback, or are they in main structure position? In other words, they have a 2-story house that are the windows that are your concern, that are looking
Mhm.
down into your yard, are they within the setbacks?
Yes, it is their house, yes.
Okay, so it's in the main structure, it's
Mhm.
not in the setback
Correct.
portion of the house?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're not asking for a setback on our side. So the distance that our structure would be to their line is the same distance that their home is to ours.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Yes, Ms. Betty?
I was going to provide some clarification to say that on the north side, they are meeting the setback.
Yes.
So they are not requesting for any reduction on the north side.
Is that true for the accessory structure? Even though it's being required to meet main structure setback, it is not in the setback?
It is meaning it's at 7 feet. They're required to be at 7 feet because they are meeting principal structure setbacks.
Because
And on
it's
the
a side
north
yard.
side, yes, on the side, they are meeting principal structure setbacks on the north side. So what they're requesting for is for the rear, which is towards the west. So on that side, if he had any
I appreciate
issues,
it.
then, you know.
That's good clarity, thank you. Okay. Fair point. Okay, any other questions for the petitioner, for staff, or for anyone else?
I just want to clarify, you'd be okay with the condition of no windows on that north side that directly, have visibility into their
Let me
backyard?
double check with my husband, I think that's what we discussed. Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's a great question, why don't you ask legal?
Just for legal, is that something that we can condition, a design aesthetic?
Well, yes, Susan Johnson Velez, Legal Department. I mean, if it's intended to preserve the privacy of the neighbors, certainly.
And if the petitioner agrees to it?
Certainly.
Sorry, and one other clarifying question. Your statement still applies if the side in question is not subject to the variance. So the requested the proposed condition is that the north side have small windows, but the variance relates to the west side of the property.
But if the condition is, if it is a condition upon our granting of the variance and the petitioner agrees to it, if it's stated properly, yeah.
Do you understand the
I do, yeah. I mean, I would rather not. I would rather be able to give, our neighbors, I would like to give whoever lives in our garage apartment, whether it's family or rented, to have a nice, windows and sunshine. But we, want to move forward with this. So we are willing to put windows up high on the north side, not willing to not have windows on our east side. Does that make sense? Did I answer the question? Okay, thank you.
All right. And did we adequately address that as a potential condition?
I believe so. One of the criteria is whether it substantially interferes with the rights of others. And
Yes.
so if the condition is intended to address that hardship criteria, then I think it would be appropriate.
Sure.
One other question for legal. So if we wanted to proceed with such a condition, would we, say that the window has to be above, like, can you give us maybe some guidance as to how we would condition it?
Is there an architectural term for sky?
Like a clear-story window, which is usually up, kind of high, or a transom.
Since we're asking questions, and since Mr. Rabot appears to want to have some point on this, did you want to chime in on this while we're having these discussions?
Hi.
Before we close the public
Sure,
hearing?
just subbing out here. Hi, I'm Paul
just-
Rabot. I live at 2302 North Massachusetts Avenue, and I have been sworn in. I saw the pattern earlier, so, I'm just, we would like to move forward on this. We do want to make sure everyone is happy. We're not trying to cause any trouble with neighbors. But it would be kind of tricky to decide exactly what window merits privacy legally. But we would be more than happy to try to make it tall enough where people can't see through on that north side would be our intent.
You understand the concern that
Absolutely.
the neighbor is saying, look, you're asking for a variance. Technically, you're not going closer to their house, you're actually moving further away, but you are asking for a variance and you're going 2 stories up, and their position is, could you just not look into our backyard?
Absolutely, yeah, and we'd be willing to do blinds or whatever needs to happen on that side. Yeah, I understand how that goes too, but I think what stalled us out with the talks before was no windows on the east side. And so that was basically sectioning off a large piece that would have no light on that whole side. So they wanted privacy glass or something. It was getting kind of funky on that side. So what we did instead is we decided to just not ask for, because the original setback that you mentioned earlier was a 5-foot setback. So originally there's a garage that's 5 feet off the 2 corners, and we were going to basically stack on top of that. So we were asking for, instead of a 7-foot setback off the line, a 5-foot from our neighbors to the north. But instead what we decided to do was just give them full leeway, the full setback of 7 feet, and just basically turn to the west and try to move that structure back as much as possible. So that was our kind of compromise. And we don't have a final design on that yet, because we had an original design for stacking on top of that garage, and now it's kind of like a rough design, if you would.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the petitioner or anyone else before we allow for rebuttal time? Seeing none, you or your wife have 5 minutes for rebuttal, should you choose to use it.
Just real quick, we do not have any grass in our lawn, I guess. It is kind of an urban farm, I guess. We do have chickens, we're within code for the chickens, and we also have a bunch of flowers and stuff, so typically we do hang out outside quite a bit. It's too nice not to. And my wife cuts and grows a lot of flowers, so that's usually what's happening outside. So we see that as an added benefit, as you can see by all of our letters. And we've also had cleared this with our civic association as keeping in code with actually bringing our neighborhood back into kind of like forms. When you do go down Park Avenue, you actually see 7 foot between each structure instead of this big kind of 15 plus 7 foot gap. So we've cleared this with the civic association, lots of neighbor support for this type of project, and so here we are.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, you still have 4 minutes if there's more you wanted to say.
We'll just tag.
I know we've said it, but I do just want to reiterate that if we do have to have the condition of the windows above, we want to move forward, so we're motivated to do that. However, I do want to state again that their windows do look right down into our yard. We do not have that privacy. No, we don't have a pool, we have a garden. And so if we have to, I understand, and we want to have good neighbors. As Paul said, lots of letters of support from our neighbors. But I would ask that we don't have that condition, since we're not asking for a setback on their side. And if we don't do the variance, we would actually be closer to their house. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, I will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion from the board. The special challenge of whether or not that motion includes, well, usually what we've been trying to do is have a motion and then have discussion after the motion is there. And if we need to modify the motion, we can do so. That's what we've been trying to do recently.
I will make a motion then. I move that the variance request for case VRB 21-126 for property located at 2302 North Massachusetts Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction of the rear yard setback from 15 feet to 7 feet with an encroachment for eaves and gutters, based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that the alleged hardship is unique to the property and that this is a corner lot without an alley, which is unusual in this neighborhood. And the proposed variance will allow for additional parking, which is not available due to the lack of the alley. And additionally, because this accessory structure is similar to other structures in the neighborhood and is therefore in harmony with the neighborhood.
Okay, so your motion is to approve and no conditions?
That's correct.
Okay, is there a second on the motion to approve?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's discuss if there's a need for discussion.
I'm not sure if this was brought up before, but Mr. Schmidt's house, is it 1 story or 2 story? Because I keep hearing when they look over our house. And I don't know that that was ever brought up.
I don't know that that evidence is in the record.
So I can't
And we have closed the public hearing.
It might be in the record in the photographs that
Yeah,
were
I'm looking.
provided.
I'm looking right now.
Yeah, I couldn't find it.
The one next to Aaron?
Aaron's got the pictures there.
Oh, those pictures. Oh, yeah, good point.
Okay.
Great point.
We're all shot from downstairs, or if there is an upstairs.
It's not evident on those pictures.
Oh, we've got a map here too. It's not really clear.
It's small, tall pictures.
Yep, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. You have some photographs as well? There you go.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
But so is the setback. They're not going any closer than they are permitted to go on the side yard on the north side.
And so my thinking in making the motion without conditions is that one thing that Mr. Schmidt brought up is that, his house is within the setbacks and that he, bought his house with full knowledge of the Tampa City Code. The requested variance is not for, so, the neighbor's objection is to the north side and the east side, both of which are currently as proposed, conform with the city code. So that's, my reasoning for approving without conditions.
I'm just gonna brainstorm on this a little bit more. So that's the main residence. They're not changing their main residence. It's an accessory structure. So I kind of feel like there is a little bit of maybe a right on the second floor on the north to, provide clerestory windows, but nothing direct down, because it is a change to the neighborhood and the condition as it was. So I'm wavering between the two myself, but that's kind of what I'm going back and forth with.
Well, that's the short end of the
It's just the
mirror.
short end on the second floor.
And it looks like it's about 20 feet, if I'm guessing from the drawings. Actually, there is a dimension on one of the drawings that had it at 20 feet, give or take. And I don't think that's unreasonable.
Well, and occasionally we're asked to approve variances for a height variance. In this case, the height is permitted by the current code.
But here's the issue though. You're moving this, if this one met main structure setback, it would be, 8 feet closer this way. As it stands now, what are technically their rear yards, their two rear yards match up with each other, and looking at the map, they've got their pool right in the backyard. So what this is doing is it's putting their main structure all the way into their backyard, 2 stories up, which from a size perspective, again, they have to meet main structure setback. So given that, I can see a reason for putting a condition on those north side windows.
If the neighbor didn't complain, we wouldn't be having this, but the neighbor has a complaint. So I feel like we have to at least consider that, that's all.
So I don't know that I'm 100% following your reasoning. So let's say that it did comply with the principal structure setbacks. Wouldn't the second story actually be close, more overlooking the pool?
It would be closer to the east side, right? They would move the house closer to the east side. So slap it right up against the house. They have every right to build it up to 15 feet, right? Because that's their rear yard setback. They have every right to build anything they want, 2 stories up, 15 feet from the west side of the property.
Should be even more intrusive into the backyard and house.
it would.
It's moving it 8 feet closer to the neighbor's principal structure.
To their principal structure, but not to their pool, not to their backyard.
Probably centers it on the pool.
But it also would require them to give up their yard space if they were to do that.
Correct.
Well, they would still have a 15-foot rear yard, but it wouldn't be in between those two, right?
But they wouldn't be here today if they wanted to do that.
Yeah. So I'll just say, here's where I'm heading, is I'm perfectly fine with approval with conditions, with approval without conditions, given what I'm looking at on the map. I'm leaning towards a nay, but,
Just to clarify the condition, if you're gonna condition this, you would say the north side of the home would be designed with the consideration of the neighbor's privacy, and windows would be a privacy style window, or?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Something along
I
those lines.
don't know how to architecturally state that.
That's what I'm trying to say, I guess you could just say to consider with consideration of the neighbor's privacy, something along those lines.
Yeah.
But I don't see how we could possibly say it's gonna be this thing's 20 feet wide, so it's gonna be a 16 by
There's no
10 inch tall window set 8 inches down from the lintel. There's no way we can define that outside of just stating.
Privacy style windows.
For sure.
Well, unless you called out the sill height of the windows on that side of the house.
No lower than
Exactly.
Windows no lower than 6 feet.
from the
The finished
floor of the second floor.
Yeah, from the finished floor on the second floor.
I'm just thinking if Sam was to reconsider her motion and add a condition. petition.
Well, I mean, to be fair, she
We have
doesn't
to
have to
give her some
reconsider her
guidance on
motion.
how to.
She can proceed with her
Sure,
motion, we
sure.
can have a vote, and we can see where it goes,
Yeah.
right? I mean, because there's a motion and a second.
Sure.
And so there is every right to proceed with vote and see what happens.
I mean, the petitioner has already said that they're happy to work on that side
Oh, but at the
for
end of it, she
privacy,
said
but
she
at the
was
end,
not one. She
on
She
the
would
east
prefer
side.
not to, yes.
Well, on the north side,
wasn't fully in agreement.
that was my thinking too, that on the north side, I mean, the other side, you're kind of at an angle anyway. It's, I think, kind of a moot point to restrict windows on that side.
Yeah.
But on the north side, you know, if you wanna, I'm not sure how the heck you'd ever enforce it, but, you know, you'd have to keep them, the sill at the bottom of the sill at 6 feet, so. Which, by the way, there's some photos right here that, I'm not sure if those are vents or this one is, I mean, this is only a
Oh, yeah,
one-story
yeah,
structure, but
they've
you
already
can
got
kind
on
of-
the
yeah.
one story, they've got those
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah,
windows.
so,
Well, it's up to the petitioner, it's up to Ms. Decker who made the motion, if you want to proceed with your motion as is, or if you want to modify it for conditions, it's up to you.
I will modify my motion, to note that it is approved, with the following condition, that, the windows on the north side of the second story of the structure be no lower than 6 feet above base floor height of the second story.
Okay, do we have a second to approve that modification?
second.
All right, motion to approve with conditions, and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion is approved with conditions, and y'all have a nice evening. VRB 2275?
The next case before the board is VRB 2775. This is addressed at 1004 West Mohawk Avenue. This is zoned RS50. The property owners are Laura and Nicola Pavard. And the variance request is to reduce the rear yard setback from 3 feet to 2.3 feet, and the east side yard setback from 3 to 0 for an accessory structure, an existing accessory structure. This is a corner yard in the USF Institutional Planning District, right at the intersection of West Mohawk Avenue and North Park Place. This is an existing structure, as was earlier stated. They were cited by code for the setbacks for the accessory structure. The applicant did say that the accessory structure was built in 1982. However, we do have Google images that show that construction was probably about 2014. And they did cite the code CICR about 1982, but the code for accessory structures in 1982 had the front setbacks at a 60 feet minimum, and the corner yard setback as a 5 foot, and the side yards as 2 feet if it's fireproof construction, or 4 feet if it's non-fireproof construction, and that was at between 1956 and 1988. So even if that were the case, that the accessory structure were built in 1982, those would be the setbacks, so they would still not be compliant. This was reviewed by right-of-way and found consistent with no comments. This was also reviewed by transportation and found consistent with no comments. This was reviewed by Natural Resources and found inconsistent with technical standards. They did have a staff memo that was attached in the staff report. We received no letters of objection or support for this variance request. The board shall consider section 27-80 in the determination of the variance request before you. If you have any questions, I would be available on hand.
Okay. Any questions? No? Petitioner, name, address, sworn.
I'm Nico Pavan. I'm the owner of 1004 West Mohawk, Tampa, and I've been sworn.
And I represent Mr. Pavan. My name is Frank Greco. I live at 5440 North River Shore Drive in Tampa, and I've also been sworn.
Okay, you have 10 minutes to present to us your objects.
Okay, we have two requests tonight. One is that we'd like to have the variance for the side setback and the rear setback for the accessory structure. And the second request, because of the complexity of this particular case and the delay that was caused by trying to determine the proper setbacks based on the code of 1982, there was a delay in getting the information to us for the previous hearing, which we were actually scheduled in October. And through no fault of the city or ours, that information didn't make it for the notice period. So we're asking for forgiveness for the fines that have been occurring since the October request.
Since September 22nd.
September 22nd. So we're asking for forgiveness for those fines because through no fault of ours or the city's, there was a delay in getting that information to us for the hearing information. And I will explain how that occurred. Well, first of all, I will show you.
Before you continue, just in case and I'll pause your time, to the extent that you're talking about fines, I don't think that's within the purview of what we can do. But I also think that there is some discussion to be had about when you're in the variance process, whether fines are paused. But that's, regardless, fine forgiveness is not something that is within our purview.
Susan Johnson Velez, Legal Department, that's correct. You would have to, you're in front of the code enforcement special magistrate or special master, so
right.
You would need to address any fines that have accrued between the October timeframe and today with the special magistrate.
Okay.
At the appropriate hearing.
Okay, we will do that. First of all, the fine or the citation occurred in March, which we went through the magistrate, and at that time it was for the setback on the rear of the shed, which is at 2.3 feet, and the side is at 0 for the property line. We did pull up. This is a photograph of the rear of the shed, and as you can see, it is fire rated with a hardy board siding. This is the front of the shed, and that's also a fire rated siding that's on there. And then what we did was we pulled the 1982 zoning code, which does say 5 feet from any other street line, not the lot line, but the street line, which it's 25 feet from the street line to the shed on the side, which is, we're asking for 0 setback there. And then 2 feet in the case of fireproofing, not more than 2 feet from the adjacent property line in the rear. So we went to the magistrate. They were a little bit confused because the current code is obviously different than this one is. And they asked us to go back to the zoning department. We did that. We went to Eric Cotton, who agreed that we had a case here that in 1982, when the shed was constructed as a dressing room for a new pool that was properly permitted and approved by the city back in 1982. So it was constructed as a dressing room. So Eric Cotton asked us if we could provide photos from 1982. Well, we can only provide photos from 2009 from the Google Air shots that we could find, but it was there in 1982. So what we are asking for, Mr. Pavan would like to codify this so there would not be an issue in the future as far as code enforcement goes, to codify the setbacks that are existing with the shed as it is, with the 0 on the street side and 2.3 inches to the rear of the shed. There is proper separation from the main structure to this accessory structure, which I believe the code says 5 feet. That's the current code, 5 feet eave to eave. So we do have that proper setback. So when we were set up for the hearing to be in September, on the 22nd of September, the actual noticing period had been missed because we did not get the information from the city because of the complexity of this case. The fact that there was a previous code that was in play when it was constructed, and because that there were the magistrate's request for us to go back to the zoning department. So we are asking for you to approve, if you would please, the 0 setback and on the side, and also the 2 foot 3 inches for the rear setback.
Okay, does that complete your presentation this evening?
I think so.
I think so.
All right, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition this evening? Seeing none. Questions from the board for the petitioners? Or anyone?
Do you have that picture from 1992 showing the shed?
1982?
2009.
2009,
Oh,
it was a
sorry,
Google shot. Do you have that one?
I don't.
You don't have that
No,
picture?
it doesn't come out clear enough. There's trees and everything over it, so you can barely see the shed itself because of the tree cover.
Okay.
And the tree's still there, and it's fine, it's perfectly healthy.
And when did you purchase the property?
December of last year.
Okay, recently.
However,
The house was owned by my father, he passed away,
Okay.
and I purchased it from my mother, so.
And when did
December of 2020.
when did your dad purchase the property? Like, is he the one who?
I believe it was 1981. I wasn't here at the time. I was in college, so I wasn't here. But I think it was 1981, and then they built the pool the next year. And we checked with Eric Cotton, and he did have all the permitting and everything for the pool. But because the shed is only 8 feet by 16, they didn't require permits apparently. So, and they still don't.
It's less than 150 square feet, which the current code says anything less than 150 square feet for an accessory structure is allowed without permitting.
So are you trying to build another structure there?
No, we're just trying to get the code so that we're 9 inches too close to the fence, to the property line.
According to today's code, but not to 1982. In 1982, it was allowed to be as it is because it is fire rated. And I actually have fire rating information here if you need to see that. So, no, the code, we're not asking for new construction. We're just asking to codify the setbacks of this accessory structure that was constructed in 1982. So that we don't have to do another
As it currently
variance.
exists.
So that, so it's codified in the documentation.
I've actually tried to move it. It's impossible to move. It weighs a ton, so.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, may I just ask one
Please.
question? Susan Johnson, Velez Legal Department. So I just want to make sure that the record's clear as to what your testimony is. So did you seek a determination from Eric Cotton to confirm
We did.
that this, but
It
you
was
weren't
requested
able
by-
to show photographs
Right.
dating all the way back to 19?
Yeah, it was requested by the magistrate that we go back to Eric Cotton. So we sat with him, Mr. Pavan and myself, we sat with him, and he could see all the documentation for the permitting of the pool and
The screen
everything that was
enclosure
there.
and the pool. that
And
are there.
everything that was there.
But not for the shed, because apparently it was less than 150 feet. You didn't require a permit.
So if you had older pictures, you
Yeah.
might not even need the variance.
Yeah.
You would have just been able to get the
Which
permit.
then the issue would be, would those photos be dated? And of course, many times they're not.
Correct.
So,
And at this point, you're updating the aesthetic of the shed, is that kind
No,
of?
No, we're doing nothing to it.
So
It
it
just has to sit
It's been
there.
hardy board since 1982 with those sills and
well,
everything?
the hardy
I
board,
put the hardy boards recently.
yeah,
Okay.
but it is fire rated. It's a
Okay.
fire rated shed. Yeah.
Okay.
This is question answer session.
Yeah, we're in questions.
I did that, okay. Question for legal. So the only issue I have with this is that we are asking to approve a variance for the property, and it's now future. So whatever happens now, they are allowed to build 0 lot line and 2.3, no matter what happens.
But,
And
but that's tied, yeah, it's tied to the site plan. So if the shed were to burn down, they could rebuild the
so
shed.
that's my question to legal, is it tied to the shed, or is it tied to the property?
They couldn't build the house up to 0 lot line. They couldn't build all the way up to that.
Correct. The site, the variance that you grant is tied to the site plan. So I think it's answering the
Okay,
question.
so
They
it's-
could rebuild the shed to the 0 lot line, but they could not build the house all the way to the 0 lot line.
They couldn't triple the size of the shed up
Right,
to.
okay, I just wanted to
It would
just
be the
clear
size of
that.
150 square feet or whatever it is now in
It's
the exact
128.
same location.
And just to clarify, we're asking for the setbacks for the accessory structure alone. We're not specifying a main structure setback.
Well, it's not what I see in front of me, so I just wanted to
okay.
make sure I was clear, so, thank you.
And just to clarify even further, I think so we're trying to vest old setbacks that we couldn't really prove that it was built during those old setbacks because we don't have pictures and there's trees in the way of the aerials.
That's correct.
So we're trying to vest an
Well-
old shed into the new setback system,
Well-
which
Based upon
requires a
testimony.
which requires a
But-
variance.
Correct, based on the petitioner's sworn testimony, and my understanding is that had they been able to show all the way back to 1982 and bring it forward,
Then this would not be necessary.
the
Wouldn't be
variance
variance.
wouldn't even be necessary,
Gotcha.
correct?
Thank you.
They could vest it without.
Can we put those pictures back up where it was like 2013, 14?
And while Jane's doing that, just to be clear, or there might have needed to be a variance because in 1982, there was not a 0-foot setback, right? So there's an
There's an argument as to how that's interpreted, but regardless, their testimony is that it's been there for 40 years.
Okay, so as I'm looking at these two pictures here, the same structure is not in both pictures.
That's because the roof was fixed. The roof was leaking on it, and it was changed. It was almost flat at the original time, and then it was changed.
But it looks larger to me. Like, I mean, the A-frame pitched roof versus the flat in addition to the height. I mean, in comparison of the pictures, it looks,
I think what you're looking at is the
Much
screen
larger.
enclosure. If you're looking.
no, I'm not looking at the screen enclosure, sir. I'm looking at
Looking at
what
that.
has a blue tarp on it and,
Right.
The blue tarp is the shed that they fixed the roof on it.
and then I'm looking in the other picture where there's like was a A-frame pitch roof on it previously?
Yeah, right there. So I mean, I don't know if my father had changed if my mother had the roof changed on it, because my dad died in 2008 or 2007. So I wasn't living here. I didn't have the house at the time.
Okay.
So-
Jane, do you want to add to that, hon?
There was an accessory structure that was on this property that would seem like maybe it was built in 1982 or something, but that was replaced with this new accessory structure.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
So, did that answer your question? All right, well then it
And
creates a new question for me.
Yeah, is there any pictures of that structure? I mean, that's the problem, there's none, is that right?
I don't have any, no.
No.
The 2009 Google shot shows the roof of the structure. It's just, it also has some tree cover, so it's a little more difficult to see, but it is there in the Google
Right,
aerials.
but the testimony was the shed has existed since 1982.
Mhm.
But can you clarify for us, the shed was replaced in 2009?
I don't know if it was added onto or built onto.
I mean, regardless, you didn't buy that, you didn't buy the property until 2021.
Right.
Right? And whatever was there when you acquired the property is what is there today.
Well, 2014
You
is what's
haven't
there.
changed it.
Right, no, the only thing that is I put a new roof on it, and then I put the fireproof panels that we
Well,
were
okay,
required
so
to.
let's be clear, when I say you haven't changed it, if you're saying, well, I did, but here's what I did, that's fine.
Right, I changed the roof on it, put metal roof on it instead of shingles or whatever was on there before, and I put the fireproof panel as required by the code.
Okay. Did any of those changes modify the footprint of the shed?
No.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal. Should you choose to use it, you can address any of the questions that were raised, or waive it if you so choose.
Well, I'd like to just go ahead and mention that the current shed is a smaller size than what is required permitting by the city, even currently. There has been no changes to the footprint size or anything of that sort. However, it still is less than the 150 square feet that the city requires for permitting. So we're still below that threshold.
Okay, and does that conclude your rebuttal this evening?
Anything else?
All right, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing and open it up for a motion from the board.
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Decker doing all the heavy lifting this evening.
I move that variance request for case VRB 22-75 for property located at 1004 West Bohawk Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction of the rear yard setback from 3 feet to 2.3 feet and a reduction of the east yard setback from 3 feet to 0 feet based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-82 of the city code, specifically that the variance will not injure the health, safety, or welfare of others. One of the reasons that we have these setbacks in place is to prevent things like fire hazards. The shed is currently fire rated, so that's not much of an issue for us to consider here. And additionally, the hardship did not result from the actions of the applicant. We heard testimony that the applicant just acquired the property last year and has not made any changes to the footprints of the shed.
Okay, motion to approve, is there a second? Swaller up, okay. Any need for discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve, say aye. Any opposed? Motion is granted, petition is approved. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next case before the board is VRB 2291, addressed at 2811 West Bay Haven Drive. The property owners are Patrick Mendoza and Catherine Finan, and the variance request is to reduce the side yard setback from 7 feet to 4 feet and 3 inches, and the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 6 feet and 1 inch, and this is for the addition to an existing single-family residence. Code section in reference to section 27-156 that has the schedule of area, height, bulk, and placement for the RS60 residential zoning district as 25 feet for the front, 20 for the rear, and 7 for the sides. This is the subject property. It's an interior lot in the South Tampa Planning District. This is the existing single-family residence, and it's connected to this accessory structure by this stairwell. This is the proposed addition. They are looking to add a roof over a sun deck that is above the existing garage. And because this is connected to the principal structure, it has to meet the principal structure setbacks. This was reviewed by Natural Resources and found consistent with the following comments. The improvements are taking place on top of an existing structure. No tree conflicts have been observed at this time. At the time of construction, all applicable sections of Chapter 27 shall be met. Transportation reviewed and found it consistent with no comments. And right-of-way reviewed and found it inconsistent, that the legal description on the site plan did not match the platted lots or the property appraiser records. These are pictures of the existing home showing the front of the property, the existing garage, the sunroof, where the proposed addition is going to be made to the roof. And again, we're seeing that roof deck that they are looking to put a roof over. And this is what they are proposing to do with the addition to the existing home, to put the roof over the roof, the sun deck, and close it on one side. Staff has received no letters of objection or support for this request, and staff reviewers have provided no memos. In the determination of the variance request before you, the board shall consider section 27-80 for the criteria of the approval or denial of a variance request. I will be available if you have any questions.
You mentioned a legal description objection. Is there clarification you can provide for us? Sounds like the petitioner's going to handle it, but is any clarification as to what the objection was?
I didn't really get what the objection was. She had,
All right,
she just
okay.
said
We'll
because
let the petitioner handle
she read the legal description on the survey and said it was not consistent with what was obtainable on the Hillsborough Property Appraiser's website. That really doesn't have anything to do with the variance request.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Way to create problems that don't exist, huh?
Right.
Okay, all right, thank you. Petitioner, come on up, state your name, your address, confirm that you have been sworn. You will have 10 minutes.
Sure. Mike Loomis, Landscape Fusion owner, 3613 West Palmyra Ave, Tampa 33629. I have been sworn in.
Awesome.
So I would like to start with those things that were just said there, just to clarify a few things. So since the initial submittal, Ms. Barbara Lynch was nice enough to point out that the survey that was submitted originally did not have the correct legal mumbo jumbo on it. That has been since corrected and been resubmitted. We actually had a new survey in the works at that time, so that's already been updated. Also, to make clarification, because it wasn't updated here, but it has been updated on the set that I brought and the set that's been resubmitted to the city since that. One of the things that came back with the variance was that the rear yard setback per plan and everything else is not going from 20 to 6'1", it's going from 20 feet to 10 feet, and that is what is currently at the garage. From there, the side is going from 7 feet to 3 feet, not 4'3". And again, that is exactly where the existing structure sits. So what we're looking to do is build vertically on top of it.
Okay, before, I gotta stop you. Do we have a notice issue from 7 feet to 3 feet?
It's a greater variance than what's.
That's what I'm asking.
Correct. Did you notice for 7 feet down to 4.3 feet, or?
Excuse me?
7 feet to, when you did your notice letters and
Yes,
your
yes,
sign?
it was all, no, it was not to the 4.3. It was to 3 feet and it was to 10 feet. So the letters went out correct. They were all correct. They did get mailed and we remailed again.
Okay.
So we updated everything.
Can we just get staff to confirm?
Yes, all right, so do you wanna confirm that now, or should he just keep going? You'll check and let us know?
Keep going, I'll check.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, keep moving.
Give us the high
Maybe
side.
extra time. Go ahead.
Fire away. All right, so as pretty much everybody stated, I think the easiest thing to see is pictures, right? If I put this way, is it upside down to you? No.
Nope, that looks great.
Okay, so biggest thing we got going on is we have a current garage structure. So originally I thought the garage was an accessory structure. We went through the whole thing with the VRB. It came back from Eric Cotton and the zoning department at that point, or actually the VRB department, came back and said, no, it is no longer an accessory structure. It is too attached to the main structure. It is the main structure. So this is not an accessory structure or anything like that. So that's where we don't have a height requirement, because this house is almost 3 stories anyway. So there is no height requirement in this particular situation. From this angle, you can just see a rooftop. Now, she kept calling it a sun deck, and that's a great definition because it is facing west, southwest. So you can imagine it is completely unusable. So that is the hardship in this particular sense, is that clients want to use this space. It's a very tight lot, very narrow lot. It's going to be very difficult if they ever want to pool in the backyard because there's no access. So at this particular point, this is their entertainment space. And what we're looking to do is be able to get them to be able to use that by putting a roof on and then putting a wall with some breathability on that western side so they can have that blockage of the sun. This would be a structure where we already submitted and said that we are not looking to ever have it walled in. It can be a condition, or I mean, I shouldn't say walled in, but have it closed in for HVAC. So that is a condition we did put with the VRB, that it would never be able to be that way. This just kind of shows you that it is truly a rooftop deck, because from the second story of their house, there is a door that walks right out onto it. It is a tiled roof. It was built with masonry walls going around with the masonry structure. So that just kind of shows you what we're already working with. Here's a picture from the front showing that it's a garage. There is that walkway tunnel connection, but again, zoning came back and said that it was part of the main structure at that point. From there, just a couple more views, and obviously you guys have all this imagery already in there, but just a couple more views of what's going on. Stairs that bring it up from the backyard, and there's that lovely west-southwest exposure. So we're not even really facing anybody's house at that point either. Just got one window on that one neighboring house. From there, the proposed would be a variation of a split-style roof for breathability. Modernism, because the house is extremely modern. And then, as you can see, just doing something on that one side just to create some privacy, and majority of it just block the sun. It would be full outdoor entertaining space at that point and usability. So there's the finished product. I'm good.
Okay, well, for clarification, that concludes your presentation?
It does.
All right, Ms. Madhu, were you able to confirm notice?
Yes, they did notice for 7 to 3 and 20 to 10.
Wonderful, thank you. Solves a lot of problems. Okay, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition this evening? Seeing none, any questions from anyone on the board for petitioner or staff?
I've just got real quick clarification. So when this thing was built, it was not connected to the home? There was no walkway from the top across?
No, there always was.
There always was?
Yep.
So I guess my question is for staff. At what point did this become not an accessory structure? If this was how it was originally built and originally permitted and it was all approved?
That's what they said. It was never an accessory structure. Originally, they thought it was, and then after they looked into it deeper, then it came back as part of main structure.
So we approved it, they built it, it got permitted, permits closed, and now today we've changed our mind.
No,
I just want some,
it's just in reference to, because I'm adding to the top, that I have to be here for that reduction.
I mean, we're not here for a variance on elevation.
Oh, yeah.
Janie Madu, Development Coordination. No, it is not my view that this was always this way. We're not able to pull previous permits because this is old and everything has been archived, because at whatever time this was built, it would have had to meet setbacks, and if it was not meeting setbacks, then it would have been approved. So this is, well, from what we see, this is something that has morphed into two structures being connected.
That's been modified at some point in time.
Correct.
And that's why it's requiring this variance.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it would still require
And
a variance.
at a point,
If you're gonna put the rooftop on it, it's still gonna require.
Well, I mean, if it was a still accessory structure for elevation.
Correct.
I'm just saying, obviously we keep a very busy agenda.
Right.
If something was permitted, built, permits closed, and then later on, we decide that we don't like it anymore.
But at the point at
we
which
can't
they
issue
did come in for the variance, and I remember speaking with him over the phone, he said this was for an accessory structure. At that point, I hadn't seen any plans or anything, and so I was giving him advice as I would for an accessory structure. But once the plans came in, I was like, this is not an accessory structure because it is connected to the principal structure.
Okay.
That is correct.
So for clarity, you are not, you're not expanding what already exists into or further into any of the setbacks. You're just going up off of what already exists.
That is correct. The only thing I would ask is that gutters can be encroached into the setback.
I think our standard approval includes with the encroachment of eaves and gutters, so you should be okay with that.
Okay.
Any other questions from anyone? Seeing none, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal, should you choose to use it.
I don't.
Okay. Then we will close the public hearing and open it up for a motion from the board. Mr. Murphy?
I move that the variance request for case VRB 22-91 for property located at 2811 West Bayhaven Drive be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in the side yard setback from 7 feet to 3 feet and the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 10 feet based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that this is an addition to, a vertical addition to an existing structure, that this is not going to have any sort of health or safety hazard for the public. It will actually improve the health and safety of the resident, guarding them from the sun, and that it does serve for the general intent and purpose of outdoor living space to be able to be used.
I second with a proposed amendment that we just note that there's an encroachment for eaves and gutters.
I would like to add that with an encroachment for eaves and gutters be added to my initial motion. Can I do it that way?
No, I don't think that's necessary, but there was a proposed condition that it never be enclosed. Did you want to modify to include that?
Yes, I would like that. Let me restate. I move that the variance request for case VRB 22-91, located at 2811 West Bayhaven Drive, as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in the side yard setback from 7 feet to 3 feet and the rear yard setback from 20 feet to 7 feet, with the following conditions: that the new open outdoor living space never be enclosed or air conditioned. That said variance as conditioned be granted upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code. Again, specifically that it's a vertical addition to an existing structure. It's going to improve the outdoor living space and increase safety from the sun for the existing resident.
Okay. Did you want to second it again?
That's fine, but sorry if I misheard, but I think it should be a setback from 20 feet to 10 feet. I heard 20 feet to 7 feet, but just for
Yes.
clarification.
Correct. You are correct. It is from 20 feet to 10 feet. And 7
You
to
have
3.
the updated plans, right? Awesome.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second. Motion with condition, never to be enclosed. All those, is there need for discussion? No. All those in favor saying aye? Any opposed? All right, your petition is approved. Have a great evening.
Thank you, you too.
The next case before the board is VRB 2293, addressed at 3319 West Palmyra Avenue. The property owners are Mark and Pamela Brown. This is zoned RS50, residential single family. The variance request is to reduce the rear and side yard setbacks from 5 feet to 3 feet for a pool screen enclosure. And the code section in reference is section 27-290.5. Screen enclosures for single-family setbacks are 5 feet on the sides and 5 feet on the rear. This is the subject property. It's an interior lot in the South Tampa Planning District. There is already an existing pool and deck area, and the applicant is looking to enclose that. This is a site plan, partial site plan provided by the applicant showing what that pool enclosure would be if they were at the 5 foot required by the code. And this is their proposal, to have that at 3 feet on all sides for the pool enclosure. This was reviewed by Natural Resources and found consistent with conditions that all, with the comments that all canopy pruning must meet ANSI A300 pruning per American National Standards for Tree Care Operations and the general standards for tree pruning. We received no letters of objection or support for this variance request, and there are no staff memos that have been provided. This is a picture provided by the applicant showing the existing conditions on the site, showing that pool and the existing patio, existing pool deck. In the determination of the variance request before you, the board shall consider section 27-80, the criteria for the approval or denial of the variance request. I'll be available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Applicant, if you would, please come on up, state your name, your address, confirm that you've been sworn, and you will have 10 minutes to make a presentation.
My name is Mark Brown. I'm at 3319 West Palmyra, and I have been sworn in. So I'm asking for a reduction in setbacks from 5 feet to 3 feet for an enclosure. So this is my backyard. As far as the history, the pool, the deck, and the spa were all installed in 1993 when the house was built. I checked with the City of Tampa archives, and they did provide me with a permit back, I guess, from First Choice Pools back in May of 1993. So it looks like it has been permitted at the time it was built. So the red line shows where the enclosure would be with a 5-foot setback. As you can see right away, the screen enclosure would pretty much block the steps that would use to enter and exit the pool. The screen would then go around the north end, pretty much close to the water, maybe 3 inches to tightrope walk over there. The screen then runs into the spa, which is raised about 8 inches from the deck, goes up and over the spa, and then it would also goes right along this small step down here in the spa, which is very small and pretty steep. So you have to like step up onto the spa and then step down another. The screen would come up right against that step, so it'd be difficult to maneuver around, get into the spa. So the reason for, the main reason for the enclosure is to open up our the outdoor space to have more room, and mainly to keep the reptiles and rodents and insects out. I've pulled a few snakes out of the pool over the years, but I don't mind them too much because they keep the rats population down. But I still don't like to share my pool with the snakes. And it's also, as far as the insects, the way it is now, most of the deck area is outside the screen, so we'd be exposed to the mosquitoes and other insects. So with the 3-foot setback, there allows plenty of space to access the steps. It'll also give me space to rear of the pool to access, and access to the spa without having to maneuver around. Also gives us more space and protection from the insects for outdoor. I think I don't have any trees or shrubs around the outside of the 3-foot area. It's mostly just grass and rocks, so I don't think there would be any problems with any emergency access. I've talked to my neighbors on both sides. They both have no objections to having the screen enclosure. Another reason for the screen enclosure is to provide an additional safety barrier. I do have a 6-foot vinyl fence that runs around the perimeter of the pool with a lock gate. There's times in the past where I've maybe left the gate open or unlocked. So one of my fears is that someone might access and get into the pool, a young child or something. So this would provide a secondary safety barrier. I did some research on the Florida's Residential Swimming Pool Safety Act, and in order to be considered a pool safety barrier, it has to have 4 requirements based on Chapter 515 of the Act. It must be at least 4 feet high, no gaps or openings, and it must be around the perimeter of the pool. And the 4th item is it must be placed sufficiently away from the water's edge to prevent a young child or elderly person who may have managed to penetrate the barrier from falling into the water. So because of this, going back to the 5-foot, because the screen is so close to the water, it wouldn't qualify as a safety barrier for this under the Act. Finally, the Florida Department of Health in Hillsborough County recently released an advisory of increased mosquito-borne disease, specifically Eastern equine encephalitis. This is a deadly disease that kills approximately 30% of the people that get infected. It's transmitted by mosquitoes, and there are no vaccines or medicines to treat this. So there's a number of safety issues here: the access to the steps, the access to the rear of the pool, the partial blockage of the screen from the spa, the protection from the insects, and the lack of a safety barrier according to Florida State Act. So for those reasons, I'm asking to move the enclosure 2 feet back away from the pool to allow to mitigate these safety issues. And that's about it.
Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation?
That will conclude, yes.
Terrific. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition? Any questions from petitioner, from the board for the petitioner? I have one. When did you acquire the home? When did you buy the house?
1993.
You bought the house in 1993?
No, I'm sorry, 2013, so we've been there 10 years.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yes. So you've been there for 10 years. Why all of a sudden now you want a screen enclosure?
Well, it's probably mainly been financial in the past. So I'm getting to the point where getting close to retirement, so I'd like to put in a new enclosure.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, you have time for rebuttal should you choose to use it.
I think that's about it.
Okay. Then I will close the public hearing and open it up for motion from the board.
All right. I move that the variance request for case VRB 22-93 for property located at 3319 West Palmyra Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for a reduction in the rear and side yard setbacks from 5 feet to 3 feet based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record and at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the 5 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that the pool was constructed much closer to the fence and property line, and holding the 5-foot setback for the pool fence would leave a dangerous, non-walkable area around the pool.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any need for discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval say aye. Any opposed? Okay, your petition passes 5-1. Have a great evening.
Okay, thank you.
Last one.
The last case for tonight is VRB 2294. This is addressed at 6419 South Richard Avenue. Property owners are Thomas and Deborah Lyles. And this is zoned RS50. And the request is to reduce the front yard setback from 60 feet to 35 feet for an RV carport. And the code section in reference is section 27-291A, accessory structure setbacks being 60 feet in the front, 3 on the sides, and 3 in the rear. This is an interior lot in South Tampa Planning District. The subject property is shown here, and in the blue rectangle, that is the outline for the proposed RV carport. This is, there is an existing shed on the property that is not shown on this site plan, but it would be shown in the pictures that the applicant has provided. And they're towards the north end of the property, towards this side right here. There is a pending carport permit that is awaiting the approval of this variance request. This was reviewed by right-of-way and found consistent with conditions. It was reviewed by Natural Resources and found consistent with conditions, and also reviewed by Transportation and found consistent. These are the shop drawings for the proposed carport that the applicant has provided. We received no letters of objection or support for this variance request. These are the pictures that the applicant has provided, showing us the subject property and the existing conditions. This is the shed, as earlier mentioned, and here you see the RV and the concrete pad in which, that it's sitting on currently. The RV, again, that is in question, and it's behind a privacy fence. This showing on the left, you have the front of the property showing that fence, and then the RV right behind it. And here you're seeing the rear of that property with the existing shed, and then where the RV is sitting currently. In the determination of the variance request before you, the board shall consider section 27-80, the criteria for the approval or denial of a variance request. If you have any questions, I will be available.
So, just a quick question, I'm
Sure.
sorry. South Richard Avenue, is that the front of the property? Is that the, what the city considers the front?
Yes,
Okay.
this is the front, right here.
Okay, and the house is currently situated closer than where they're seeking to put the RV parking?
Right, so this is the house, so they're actually looking to put it behind the house, but they're still not meeting the 60 feet because the lot is about 97 feet long, so.
Okay, but does the house already sit in the setback?
Yeah, I believe the house is within the setbacks. It's a bit hard to see from here.
The house is 16 feet from the front property line to the front of the house.
Okay.
Oh, okay,
all right.
so it's.
Well, let's
Yeah.
let him address it then, so we'll go
Right.
ahead.
I've got a better drawing of that.
Okay.
drew the
Sorry,
shed in.
maybe I'm getting ahead of things by asking the questions. Go ahead and state your name, your address, confirm that you've been sworn for us, and then you can explain it to us.
My name's Thomas Lyles, 6419 South Richard Avenue. I have been sworn.
Good job. Everybody's done such a great job this evening. I must have been really stressed about that. Nice work. All right, you have 10 minutes.
Basically, I just want to cover my RV, keep it from being sun beat. And at the time I built the shed, I didn't build it, I had it built by Tough Shed a number of years ago. Then the wife wanted an RV, so we bought an RV. Had the pool already, fence there, I thought, well, put it in the backyard, Had no idea that it had to be 60 feet from the front property line. And if you look at the picture of the pad, the back of the RV, that's 60 feet to the front property line. The very back of my pad, that's 60 feet. So my property's only 96 feet wide. Deep. Or what is it, 90? No, it's not. It's, what is it right here? It's 95 feet wide. And it's 96 wide, or 98, 96 wide. But anyway, what you saw in the pictures is what I have right now. It is in my backyard behind a 6-foot privacy fence. No one will ever see it unless they drive by and look down between the two houses. And I do have a number of pictures here. I drove around the neighborhood because I've lived in Tampa pretty much all my life. I know South Tampa like the back of my hand. There are structures, carports, RV carports within 5 feet of the front property lines throughout South Tampa down there. I got pictures of about 3 or 4 of them in my neighborhood. So I didn't, be honest, I didn't know you had to be 60 feet from the front property line to build a RV carport. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. But that's all I'm asking, is to be able to cover my RV so it doesn't get beat by the sun.
Okay.
Actually, from the side of the road, the edge of the road to the front of the RV is 50 feet. It's 35 foot on the plan as far as my property line to the front. And my pad's 25 feet, so there's your 60 feet. All the way to the back of the RV pad would be 60 feet. So that's what you're saying is, without a variance, I couldn't put nothing to the very back of my backyard. All property is not the same width. No, I'm actually on a double lot where I'm at. That's all I'm asking is,
Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
I don't know what else to say, sir.
So yes, it does. All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about this petition
I don't think so.
Seeing none, does anyone have any questions for the petitioner?
I just want to make sure that you would never put anything to enclose it, you're
Oh,
just
no.
the carport only.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't even want to, I would rather have it open, because the wife and I don't want to screen, we have a pool, we had it for a few years. We don't want to screen in pool, we like the sun, but it's beating my RV up, that's all. I just don't want my RV to get sun beat long before it's time, before I get to use it too much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
What's the rear yard setback on that?
3 feet.
3 feet?
So weird.
So easy to meet that.
I think we have it.
Right.
Is this only for, I don't,
What I understand, it was,
only for accessory structures, so,
Yeah.
For accessory structures, the front setback is 60, so, and because this is detached, where.
right, you don't want it in the front of the house, you want
Right.
the accessory structures behind. But in this situation, it's behind the fence, yeah, got it, okay. Okay, any other questions?
I have one question. I'm looking at the covered area post in relation to your proposed covered RV area. What would be the distance between those two structures and posts?
it's right at 5 foot.
5 foot.
There's a gate that I go through with my rider mower between this overhang off the house, which is part of the house when I bought it. My boat sits under that. And then, like I said, there's 5 foot from that over to the RV pad. It's 13 foot wide, and then you got another 8 foot to the side property line.
Great. I just wanted to make sure that that was an adequate.
Yeah, that's, I know about that too. Yeah, it's plenty of room.
Great.
So, it's just, can't stick it any further back in my yard, it'd be in my shed.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, I have to offer you 5 minutes for rebuttal time if you want to use it.
I have nothing
Nothing
else
further
to
to
say,
say?
sir.
All right. Then I will close the public hearing and open it up for motion from the board. Anyone want to make a motion? Anyone want to make a motion? At the end? Okay.
All right, I move that the variance request for case VRB 22-94 for the property located at 6419 South Richard Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for reduce the front yard setback from 60 to 35 feet, 60 feet to 35 feet, with an encroachment for the eaves and gutters, although the carport, you shouldn't have them, but based upon the applicant presenting competent and substantial evidence in the record at this public hearing of an unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty when considering the five hardships criteria set forth in section 27-80 of the city code, specifically that in order for him to be able to park it within the variance lines, it would be impossible if we don't grant the variance, and it isn't encroaching a safety hazard upon any of the neighbors or themselves. And with those reasons, I move that we grant the approval without conditions.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those, is there a need for discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? You're good.
Thank you. Can I clarify one thing real quick? You know, you talk about a front setback. My understanding is the front, your front yard starts at your property line, correct? And goes to the front of your house. Anything past that is considered your backyard. Am I wrong in saying that?
It's an accessory structure. You could probably work with staff to understand it better, but,
Well, I mean, I'm just understanding what they mean by a front setback. You know, is it front yard
it is a
setback?
setback from the front line of the property. But because it's an accessory structure, they
It
want
has
it
to
to be
be.
60 feet from that point. Basically, they don't want sheds in the front yard.
Exactly. Well, thank you.
All right, have a
Thank you
great
for your
evening.
time. thank you very much for your time helping me, because this was my first rodeo and I'm not good at none of this. That, hey, believe me, a few of the people have stopped by and questioned me, and I told them what I'm going through to do this. You know what they tell me? The city's a joke. You should have just put it up. I said, well, I'm doing it the right way. Thank you. Thank you.